When designing an experiment, you want to start with a research question, all right? It's a bit of a common trap to go in and start designing the experiment without really knowing exactly what you're trying to answer. So you want to keep your research question simple. It's got to be specific to what you're researching, and you want to keep it succinct. Ideally, you can answer it with a sentence or two. An example of a research question could be, say you're a researcher and you wanted to analyze different diets. So you're trying to find the best diet that can produce weight gain for, say, my hatchlings. So with this in mind, your response variable would be weight gain. So sometimes response variable is known as a dependent variable. And with weight gain, perhaps you'd be measuring it every week or over a greater time period, and you'd want to measure it in, say, grams per week. Okay. Now, your three different treatments, okay? So the treatments of the diet, this is also known as the explanatory variable or sometimes the independent variable, and you're hoping to use these diets to explain variance within your response variable weight gain. Before I start my experiment, I need to understand what my experimental units are. Okay, so I've got a couple of options here. I could look at, having chicks as the experimental unit, in which case my response variable would be the mean weight of the chick. Or I could use pens, okay, and have like a cage of chicks, okay? And in that case, my response variable would be the mean weight of the pen. Now, with this, you're going to need to replicate your experimental units. So whether that's replicating the individual chicks or whether you're replicating the pens, you need to do both. And then from there, you'd need to do a sample size analysis to kind of work out how many chicks you're going to need. Now, the rule of thumb is the more chicks, the better. That'll give you increased power. Once you have the design, you're ready to describe the statistical question. All right, so here we develop the null hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is a statement of no effect, okay? So in this case, it would be that the mean weight gain is the same across all the treatment groups. And then the alternative hypothesis is the opposite of that, all right? So it's suggesting that there is some statistical difference between the three groups. Now, what particular design I would use? From this, it's very important to look at your variable types, okay? So our explanatory variable is categorical. We've got three different levels, all right? You've got diet 1, diet 2, and diet 3. And our response variable is numerical or continuous. So with this in mind, I choose to use an ANOVA. If I had a continuous explanatory variable, however, I'd use linear regression instead.
This diagram demonstrates the research cycle. So the best place to start is the research question, which is really important to try and hone in exactly what you want to find out. From this general research question, it's pretty important to then come up with the statistical question, think about your main assumptions and how you want to design your experiment. From that, you can then think about the experimental layout and running the experiment and how exactly you're going to collect the data. The next step is then analysing your results. The key thing for this is that you've had to have thought about your statistical question in a clear way to know how you're going to analyse your results. And then lastly, you've got to summarise and report it all and come up and write about your findings. There are two key ways to start thinking and developing your research. There's talking to people and there's also the scientific literature. So firstly, to do with the people, there's a wide range of people you can talk to. There's people in your field, so other academics, which you can talk to either in the tea room or at conferences or just by door knocking at some people down the corridor. You can also talk to industry partners, so they might be in the form of farmers or other people in different industries, and this way you can kind of piece together what is required or what people want from research. The second component is looking into the scientific literature, and when you do this, you're really looking for gaps in the knowledge and what isn't known at the time, and to try and piece together where your research can really fit into this. In any experiment, to be able to decide on the cause and effect clearly, you need at least 2 treatments for comparison, and in many cases in agriculture you have many more than this. Usually we're interested in 2 or 3 factors in an experiment. If you try and look at too many more, it becomes too complicated too quickly.
Time taken to plan and design an experiment before you've actually started the project is essential. It's a common trap that people go in and they don't have such good plans or designs for what's going to happen, and they come to the end of their project, they've got all their data and it's just a waste of money because they can't analyze it. So if you can plan the analysis at the beginning, because your design is crucial to your analysis, then that will help you a lot. So personally, I go and see a statistical consultant to check with this before I start my actual experiment. And at many universities in Australia, you've got free access to statistical consultants. In Australia's environment, research questions typically relate to the economics of production. So yield is key here. So typically they're interested in, how efficient they are in regards to yield, and also perhaps they will look at, how much production they've got from yield per unit of water. If we think about crop experiments, the three major types of factors that we need to look at are genotype, environment, and management. So genotype is all to do with aspects of the crop, okay? Now the environment is something that we unfortunately have limited control over, okay? So this includes soils and weathers and year and location. Management is a key aspect that the farmer does have a lot of control over, okay? And that's a bit of an advantage in that regard. Examples of these could be tillage, fertilization, or irrigation.